Hi, this is Brian from Provision Studios, and today I'm going to make a quick comparison video between the specifications on the Canon VIXIA HF-G50 and the Canon VIXIA HF-G60. Now, I just recently purchased the G60, so I've only shot it for a very minimal amount of time, but I still want to give a brief commentary on some of the main differences that I think will make a big difference in your purchasing decision based on the two models. I have several videos on the G50. I've owned it for a couple months, and I've used it in the studio. I've used it outside, and I feel like I've got a good idea of what the G50's capabilities are. Now the G60, although they are basically the same style of camcorder, there are several differences. So let's dive into the specifications and go over some of those differences right now. First off, I think probably the biggest difference between the two cameras is the sensor size. The G50 basically has a 1/2-inch sensor, whereas the G60 has a 1-inch CMOS sensor. So you're basically getting a much larger sensor for about $700 more on the G60. That's about the price difference I've seen on most sites. The effective resolution, however, is 8.29 megapixels in both cameras. So the sensor size doesn't affect basically the effective quality of the camera. You're still getting the same quality of image in an 8.29 megapixel resolution. Now the lens is different in both cameras, so let's go over some of that right now. The focal length on the G50 is 3.67 to 73.4 millimeters. And the maximum aperture on the G50 is f1.8. So on the G60 we have a focal length of 8.3 to 124.5 millimeters with a maximum aperture of f2.8. So the trade-off there is you can get a wider aperture on the G50 than you can the G60, but the G60 has a greater focal length difference on that lens. The optical zoom is a little different also. On the G50 you have a 20 times optical zoom, whereas on the G60 you have a 15 times optical zoom. So know that on the G50 you have the capability to zoom in more than you do on the G60. The filter size on both cameras is the same. It's a 58 millimeter filter that you can put onto the lenses. So speaking of filters, let's get into that right now. Both cameras have internal ND filters. The difference is this: on the G50 you really don't have control over when the ND filter comes on and off, other than once you go down to f4, the ND filter comes on. So you don't have control over that. Like, you can't go at an f8 and not have the ND filter on. Whereas on the G60 you have manual control over whether the ND filters are on or off, and the level of the ND filter that you have on. So you have a 1/4, a 1/16, and a 1/64 ND filter that you can turn on and off based on the controls on the side of the camera. Both cameras shoot with the same recording formats or recording modes. They both shoot in ultra high definition at frame rates of 30 and 24 frames per second. They also both shoot at 1080p at frame rates of 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and 24 frames per second. They also both shoot at 720p at 60 frames per second. Now, a big difference on these two cameras is the focusing. The G60 uses a hybrid contrast-based autofocus system, which is not really good. The G60 uses dual pixel autofocus, which I'm going to tell you right now, I have not used the G60 near as amount of time as I have used the G50, and I can tell you already that the dual pixel autofocus on the G60 blows the G50 away. I would go out. I'd be willing to go out on a limb and say that the G60's dual pixel autofocus makes it worth the $700 higher price tag as opposed to the G50's contrast-based autofocus. Now, I'm not saying that to say that the G50 is not a good camera. It is actually a great camcorder with many awesome features that I find very useful. But the dual pixel autofocus makes the G60 another level of camera above the G50. It really, to me, is a deal breaker when you compare the two cameras. If you have the extra money, spend it on the G60 for this feature alone. I've read online that the firmware update gave you a more accurate focus when you zoom in. Now, again, I just bought the G60. It came already with the firmware update installed on it from the factory, so I don't know how the zoom focus was before the firmware update. What I do know is the dual pixel autofocus is outstanding. And some of the footage you're looking at right now, I really tried to push the autofocus on the G60 to see if I could get it to hunt, and I was never able to lose focus on anything I shot with this camera outside. It truly is probably perhaps the best feature on this camera when compared to the G50, because the autofocus on the G50 really was a point of frustration for me, and I mentioned that in several videos that I did on the G50. I would be outside, I would literally touch a point of focus on the camera, and it would lose focus without me even moving. I'd be locked down on a tripod on a focus point, and it would focus on it, and then for no reason that I could see, it would lose focus right in the middle of a shot. And that was, again, a point of frustration for me. Alright, let's move on. Both cameras have a manual mode. So you have an auto mode where basically the camera makes its adjustments for you, and then you have a manual mode which completely unlocks this camera to allow you to do any type of adjustment that you see fit. Which, for me, when you're spending this amount of money, the $1,000 and up range, you're paying for manual control. You're paying for the ability to make the shot look any way that you want. So that is a great option that the G50 and G60 models give you. A brand of camera that I also have, the Sony HDR FX. I'm sorry, the Sony FDR AX53 is also a 4K camcorder in the same price range as the G50, and it does not have a manual mode. Basically, you can control certain aspects of your exposure, but you don't have full control over your exposure at any time. You're sort of locked in to this camera giving you what it feels is the best shot. Now, I will say this. The AX53 is an excellent 4K camcorder that is better than the G50 and the G60 in certain applications. There will be people that will go out and have the AX53 and be perfectly happy with it. But not having that total manual control, it does present you with certain limitations in certain situations. So the manual feature on both the G50 and the G60 make it, to me, a different brand of camcorder over other camcorders in this price range that don't give you that manual functionality. On the G50, the maximum shutter is 1/1000th of a second. On the G60, the maximum shutter speed is 1/2000th of a second. So there's a difference there. The stabilization is the same on both cameras. I couldn't really see a difference on one over the other. I swore initially when I was outside with the G60 that the stabilization was a little better, but when I brought that footage into the studio and brought it into DaVinci Resolve and really looked at it, I think they're about the same. I don't think that one is better than the other. Now, that bears mentioning that I have not taken both cameras out and done side-by-side tests, footage tests with them yet, so I'm speaking just basically off of the experience of having them both in my hand at separate times. So that is going to be something I'm going to make a video with in the future, but right now I just want to say that I don't think there is a marked difference on the stabilization on one camera over the other. Now the weight, the G50 weighs 1.62 pounds without the lens hood and battery, and the G60 weighs 2.1 pounds. So there's about a ½ pound difference between the two cameras. Now, I mentioned that right after the stabilization because I wanted to point this out. I have a Zhiyun crane gimbal, and I was able to get the G50 fitted on that gimbal and have it work to where I was able to get really good stabilized shots walking around in my yard while the G50 was on that gimbal. I was not able to get the G60 fitted onto the Zhiyun crane in any fashion. I mean, I tried all different settings on the gimbal, but this G60 is just too big for that stabilizer. So you are going to find yourself, if you're trying to do a lot of handheld shots with the G60, that you're going to have to go get a more robust gimbal in order to get some really nice handheld creamy smooth or buttery smooth motion with this camera, because in my opinion it is not possible to achieve that with the built-in stabilization that the camera offers. Both the G50 and the G60 come with a 3-inch LCD, so there's no benefit in one camera over the other there. You'll find that that 3-inch LCD is perfect for anything you're trying to do. I do recommend an external monitor. I have both a FieldWorld 7-inch monitor and an Atomos Ninja Flame that can both connect to the G50 or the G60 with the HDMI output. You also get 10-bit 422 picture out of the HDMI, so you can record in ProRes on something like the Atomos Ninja Flame. So that is something you can do with both the G60 and the G50 cameras. So there's no benefit over one over the other there. They both offer that amazing feature. So let's bring it all back to a boil down. If you are fine with the G50's half-inch sensor and the I guess the way I would say it is an inferior focusing system with the contrast-based hybrid fashion focus, I guess I would recommend the G50 over the G60 because of the $700 cheaper price tag that it comes with. But if a 1-inch sensor, dual pixel autofocus, and with the new firmware update giving you C-Log 3 capabilities, then I would say that the G60 is a no-brainer upgrade over the G50. Both cameras are excellent. They give you great image quality. They really do come with some amazing features on a camcorder that I was not able to find on other brands. So to me, in my opinion, Canon is where you should go if you're looking at affordable, prosumer grade handheld camcorders. They really offer great value for the dollar, and they give you some really good, high quality image footage that you can put up against, in my opinion, any other camcorder in this price range. The firmware update that this camera that I had came with, and if you had one that you bought prior to the firmware, I would say do the firmware upgrade if you haven't already. I think it's 1.0.1 is that new firmware update. The custom picture profiles that it gives you really are awesome over the standard picture profiles that come on the G50. Having the wide dynamic range and the C-Log 3 custom profiles, I think, make the G60 a reputable camcorder to put up against anything else that's on the market. Having that C-Log profile that you're able to capture footage with really is awesome to bring that footage into a editing program like a DaVinci Resolve. Throw on the color space transformer plug-in on your footage and instantly make this footage just be really awesome without doing anything else to it. So you're not able to do that on the G50. As good as the footage you pull off the G50, you really don't get the full functionality of a nonlinear an NLE like DaVinci Resolve with the G50, because you don't get that C-Log styled shooting that you do on the G60 with the firmware update. Alright, so I think you can see where I'm going here. The G60 to me was the camera I always wanted. I finally was able to afford it after I was able to save up some money from some studio work over the summer. I'm glad I was able to get this camera. To me, this really is the camera I was hoping for. I haven't used it very much, but just in the short time I've used it, it has gone above and beyond my expectations. The firmware update really opened up this camera's 1-inch sensor. I can't imagine not having the features that the firmware update provided. I would think that at that point this was a wasted 1-inch sensor camera without that firmware update. I can see with the firmware update where this camera really is quite possibly the best under $2,000 camcorder on the market. Again, not having this camera prior to the firmware, I can't comment on the zoom focus issues that I'm guessing were an issue with me doing the zoom focus. It was just superb. I was so pleased to not see a single frame of my footage ever hunt for focus. I can't tell you how important that is to me in the style of shooting I do. So again, the G60 is a slam dunk, no-brainer to me. If you have a $2,000 budget, this is the camera to get. I'm going to close this video out now, and I'm going to go take the rest of the weekend to shoot some footage on both the G50 and the G60. Hopefully I can make a good comparison video for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And you can always email me at bbuck822@gmail.com. I look forward to your comments, and until the next video, I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.